After turning David's sister Amy into Lenny, Farouk loses David as an ally. Not real surprisingly. But has a plan to get him back with the help of Future Syd. And the delusion spreading through Division 3 reaches a critical juncture. But don't worry about it. David took care of everything. Or did he? I don't think so. It's the FX original series, Legion, Chapter 15. Hey everyone, D here, and welcome to this week's review of Legion. So yes, as usual, spoilers are ahead. Alright, so big story moves this week. The past 2 weeks we've had a lot of sort of background and character work done. This week they make up for it with really pushing the story forward. And in some ways it felt a lot like the Monk episode. With the whole chattering teeth and the infection. Where as soon as we kind of something started moving, the whole thing was, the whole situation was dealt with. As it seems to have been by the end of the episode. With perhaps a caveat or two left over. So yeah, a lot of stuff happening this week. And as usual, brilliant opening with John Hamm narrating, kind of giving our story arc, our delusional background here, talking about the manifestation of bad ideas and how even the reasons behind those ideas may be false, the implications, the response to them can be very real. And I also love the use of the Puritans in kind of that discussion. It gave a very America feel to the whole statement. I mean, obviously we have the Puritans reacting against the witches and the whole Salem trials. That is part of history. But it really, to me, more of the ideas of, again, building this foundation, the whole basis here. And I think there may be some commentary with how misinformation can spread throughout the populace and have large cultural ramifications like today. And again, the final statement too, also there, I loved, what is more terrifying, fear or the frightened? That is a really interesting point to get in because yes, fear may cause responses, but the frightened physically do them. And that can often be much more frightening. And speaking of frightening moves, we did have our little encounter between David and Farouk. David barking like a dog. Very upset at Farouk here. And we can sort of see that as Farouk's actions has elicited an emotional response after David. And I think that's sort of what Syd goes when she has her little visit with Lenny later on, talking about her being just a distraction. That seems to have been what this move has done from Farouk's end. As it has David, he's not thinking clearly. He is reacting emotionally, angrily. And maybe that's what Farouk was going for, but he seemed a bit surprised when David cut off their partnership, that perhaps changing his sister into Lenny wasn't something that he wanted. Farouk playing the idea, and I always love that, even not connected with David, he is still constantly trying to manipulate David. Which I really love from a character standpoint. And so much of that arrogance and godlike, you know, talking to David, you should be so much better. It's like he's trying to help David become this greater godlike being. And unfortunately, things like morality and compassion seem to be getting in the way. So yeah, it was interesting. As I was saying a couple weeks ago, I was really trying to figure out why Farouk would do this to Amy. Didn't he think that this was going to upset David? David's response was exactly what I thought it was going to be. Yet Farouk, like I said, seemed surprised. Like he was doing David a favor. You always disliked your sister. You know, you really wanted her dead. And maybe this is Farouk's, again, that attempt at manipulation to push and get rid of the people around. He even says this, I'm going to do this to everyone else around. You know, in some way, like he said, he's trying to help David break away from his humanity. And seemed honestly hurt. You can go back to the children's table now, David. Go, bye-bye. When David pulled away. So, yeah, I'm just, for someone as smart as Farouk, as conniving, you know, as planning point. I was really surprised that this wasn't the response that he was planning for, and perhaps in some ways that it was. That all of this is to keep David kind of on his, you know, not reacting, not thinking things through. Again, that emotional, crazed, reactionary response. But he does seem to need David's help. So again, I'm not really sure what Farouk's plan is on this. And going after Future Syd, I love that whole bit. I was really trying to figure out if he was riding along with David, was going to kind of like backdoor through David projecting onto Syd, because this was all following the conversation between past Syd and David about the morality of interacting with a future self. A little jealousy going on there. Kind of makes sense. David certainly feels that there's a reason to be cautious on the interaction, and then doesn't really sort of fall through with it later on, which like I said, we'll get to in just a second. But yeah, it was interesting just sort of following Farouk's projection. But, you know, if David can do it, then it's something that Farouk can do too. He's smart. He's got a car that he can supercharge. I think it was just feeding a loop in there is what was going on, out of the back of the car and back into the engine, looping it, and then, I don't know, some sort of psychic connection point there. But going after Syd to try and get back on David's side. Now the cool thing about this, it was a brilliantly shot sequence there. I love the two of them going back. I love the little glitches happening through their connection, like everything isn't just quite right. The lighting was done, that kind of black with just those outline of squarish curved figures all around. It was again, beautifully done. I love the musical chairs sequence of the two of them kind of fighting for control right there. Who is in charge at the moment? Where certainly the more time is spent, it feels like Farouk certainly is. But this is the first time we get the indication that future villain is in fact David. Many people were speculating on that, and that does seem to be the case. It was never said, but that seemed what was clearly implied, and I loved Farouk's response from a villainous standpoint. How he's talking about how you have all these blue-eyed, white-skinned people, you know, very much bringing up the classic X-Men characters, coming due and trying to get rid of Farouk, and how bad that he is, and how, you know, how much of a villain he is. And when it comes up turning around in the future, that it's the hero, David, who ends up being the villain. And to stop the hero, you need the villain to now be the hero with Farouk. It is a great turnaround. And even Syd's response, perhaps we are all villains, interestingly appropriate depending on the path it goes on. But the downside that I got with this is, one, Syd seems to buckle to this pressure very well. Farouk is very good at manipulating. But Syd doesn't really seem to hold out that much. He doesn't seem to try and cut things. Certainly willing to continue to engage with Farouk. But two, this brings up more of the point is, what is Future Syd's plans? Because you're trying to bring in a villain to stop the good guy from becoming a bad guy, but why don't you just try to stop the good guy from being a bad guy? Adding Farouk into the mix doesn't seem to necessarily guarantee a fix for that situation. David does bring this up with Future Syd, and whose response is, well, it couldn't hurt, it's something else, it's a new try, maybe it doesn't. It seems very unsure for all these big moves that she is doing. And I also disliked Future Syd suddenly shifting. She became weaker once she started working with Farouk, because then she just became manipulated. It was very clear where David starts to pull away, then Syd's response, what is it? It's seductive to try and pull him in. Too forward-moving, I think, for David's comfort, and not very smart. So when David naturally pulls away, because he doesn't want to cheat on current Syd, his actual girlfriend, Future Syd, again, it is weird, it's understandable. Then Syd has the natural pull-away response. Oh, that's right, you just go away. That's right, you do the right thing, you do what you got to do, I'm going to be okay. Just total manipulation. I mean, kind of too on the nose. for my personal comfort. I mean, great character work and so on. It works with David because he wants to believe. And suddenly the commitment, the promises of don't cross the line, if you want a hug, that's okay, but that's kind of it. Now it's can we say goodbye? So, yeah, this episode shows David's power, but also his kind of immaturity too. And our delusional arc appears to be sort of sorted through this episode. Very straightforward, really, in this storytelling. Beautifully done. I loved how all of these little bits have sort of set up throughout the season. Here, again, it's kind of the payoff. We get it sort of breaking through Tana, who starts going around and doing the little whispering with the eggs, and it's the spreading of those ideas. I thought was all beautifully done. And then as people start to awake and start to sort of embrace this delusional idea, going after Fukuyama. Why? Because he's eating people. It's a big jump. But I mean, I just love how this kind of starts its whole thing out, especially there with Clark, who pulls up and he's just like, yeah, I know. I've been suspecting this for a long time. Come with me. that whole sequence where everybody sort of meets up and they start trading stories. Yeah, this is it. People are getting away and some people go to meet him and they never come back. Oh, he's eating them. This has to stop. It is. I mean, it was this perfect mad crescendo of insanity. Beautifully done. The hallway fight. Well, I mean, what? We had Clark reacting to the Vermilions as he was walking and turning and they're going into their different little dance modes, and it was just, I mean, visual treat there was perfect. But when they go and they're trying to attack to get to Fukuyama, and Tana going up against the Vermilions, it was beautiful. It was so beautifully Matrix-like, all in slow-mo, and the machine guns, ding, 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 and just knocking down the Vermilions and seeing the holes blown out, and they're just reacting as computers would. Regeneration mode. I'm waiting for them to start to heal and come back up into the fray. Instead, we've got more numbers coming in. And then Carrie with the whole slow-mo axe move was just a whole beautiful sequence. I mean, really, so much of this was so beautifully done. A lot of great scenes. But, of course, we do have our Scene of the Week! Which is the one just falling once they get into Fukuyama's chambers. Because, okay, look, I still think Fukuyama might turn into MODOK. I think that might be part of the move that they're going on. Maybe that's my delusion. It's just what I want to hold on to, despite all of the facts and realities that are around me that I'm having to push away to accept this. But I really did feel for it when they come in and ask him to pull off the basket. And it's just this poor old Japanese guy with these neck braces. I think the wires might be where they're projecting some of the imagery and video feed up. But he just looks so weak and frail and just poor guy. I really felt for him. I really was sad about that. But then just as we hit that, David's appearance, boom, up here, stop. Turns Clark's gun into a mop. That was the best one. That was it for the moment right there. Because this is David jumping in, literally doing almost the Deus Ex Machina. Just walking in as a god. Stop. Freezes everybody's things. You don't even have a weapon anymore. You got a mop. Go ahead and clean up. And we'll just fix this whole thing and sort it all out. And then just looks into Syd's mind and just pulls out the little thing and pulls it out of Clark. And, insanity. I mean, it was so perfect. It was so Legion. It was so much of that perfect once David has decided to do something, really showing how powerful he is. And this is what I meant before, is this episode really showing David's power and also his weakness too. There is so much that he can do, and that it's an understandable why there was a fear if David becomes too powerful and starts to lose his mind of what he can do, because this scene unto itself was just astounding how he could affect the world around him, and there wasn't really anything anybody else could do. And then just goes and chases the creature off after pulling out a poor Tanami. I love Tanami. He's one of my favorite characters, and I'm really feeling for him in this. But then David's chasing this thing down. I love that this little bit with Carrie. It's a bad idea, because it's literally a bad idea. Crawling around. And then that final little encounter there where he jumps into the mine and he's just like, look, man, can you have a little understanding? I've had a long day. It's been a tough week. I'd rather just sort of let you go and let bygones be bygones, but if you're going to throw down, then I'm going to have to kill you. It was just, again, it was so perfectly David of kind of like, look, man, it's just your timing's bad. You're a villain, and in normal circumstances, I'd just X you all out. But I'm going to give you a moment right now. Bug creature, of course, doesn't take it, and a great reverse, change perspective shot, how they go from David small and the creature large, and as they run towards each other, the perspective shots, and suddenly you have giant David and tiny little bug. And this is part of my concern here. Is killing the bug a bad move for David right there? Because there's almost a little bit of glee out of it. And they always say the worry about serial killers is they start out small with pets and things like that. And yes, this is a bug, and yes, it probably deserves to die, and it's probably the best choice out of it. But there was something out of there seemed to be a little joy that David took out of this. And this concerns me about that slippery slope thing. This might be something that Farouk would approve of, destroying the bugs, these small things around us. And then as we start to look around, how many other things start to look like bugs and small things around us. So this is just one little moment right there where it really caused a bit of concern, like, is this the dark move for David right here, where he starts to be okay with destroying his enemies? But while that might be a bad move for David, this I don't think is necessarily the end of our Delusion arc. Because they hook up autonomy to the machine, to the mainframe. And I don't know why. Once they said that, his body's dying, we can save his mind. Why? I mean, I like Autonomy, like I said, he's one of my favorite characters. But this seems like a bad move. And certainly how we have that whole last end sequence, again, beautifully done. I mean, first of all, do they walk through the picture into the place where they're looking into those plants? Because that's what it looked like. It looks like they walked up to the screen that was showing the forest, and then they walked through the screen and into the forest. Maybe just from a digital standpoint, because it does seem to be that tree is part of the computer. Again, it's Legion. Things like this happen. But as they're talking about that whole idea of delusion and things going on, and we have that whole follow-up pattern where John Hamm's narration sums up the whole thing about delusions or ideas, and ideas can be spread, and that the reaction to them, can be bad, and we're pattern-seeking people. Is this a pattern? Is this whole thing a plan? Where did this bug come from? I understand this might be a new delusion creature, and perhaps this is just a random interaction. We're trying to put a pattern where none exists. This is just a chaotic moment that will then maybe alter events coming into the future, or was this planned? I don't know. I was trying to go back and watch several of the episodes to find out where this bug came from, and it just sort of appeared after the narration point of talking about delusion. So is autonomy getting into the computer by design, or is this a random act that will then later on pay off in large negative consequences? Because it seems very much like autonomy is trapped inside the computer. Again, brilliantly done with a large set that looks like the physical interior of a computer, and it's got all the ones and zeros and code all around it. I love that imagery. But is this a bad thing? Now you've trapped autonomy in the computer. Is the delusion trapped in there with him? Like the grandma there and the shh. Is that what that's saying? So now is the delusion going to spread through to Fukuyama and the whole rest of Division 3, at least their data. So that's why I'm saying I don't know if this is over. I just don't know if this was planned or this is just a random aside that's going to interact with everything else that is going on. Is this connected to Farouk? is it random and we're just trying to make a pattern come together because we're pattern-seeking people? Don't have an answer to that. All right, just a couple of small things. David's talking to himself, talking to various aspects of himself. We've been seeing this a little bit throughout the episode. We heard it again here while he's laying there ignoring Syd before having that uncomfortable conversation about the moralities of dealing with your future version of your girlfriend while you're still seeing your current version of your girlfriend. Anyway, I love the idea of him having those different conversations, aspects with himself, and I'm wondering if this is how we're slowly getting that manifestation of the multiple personality aspect of David's character. I've never known how much they were going to dive into that just from a mental standpoint or actually have fractured different personalities. And it looks like they're starting to at least blend some of those ideas, and I'm really curious to see where that's going to go. Hopefully one of those isn't a villain or a supervillain. I found Farouk's conversation with Syd very telling when he was talking about how the house wins and who makes up all of these rules. Because he basically started talking about likelihoods and probabilities and how people are going to act and how people are going to react. And that he uses those, investigates those in order to then sort of plan his next move. What Syd referred to as cheating. Well, not really. Who makes up the rules? If you're a god, you can make up your own rules. But I think this really refers back to what we were seeing last week with David's alternate realities, alternate possibilities. I think this is something that Farouk was sort of tapping into right there, is being able to see these different possibilities, probabilities of how people are going to act and react, and thus can sort of plan so many moves ahead because he knows where all the pieces are going to end up, or how to push each one more. Which again, which is why I wonder about the whole bug thing, and how much he's involved or not. Alright, well I think that pretty much covers everything. So, 4 more episodes. Well, got a month left. A lot of stuff to do. Still got to find Farouk's body. We got to see how David's going to turn into this whole super villain. But, you know, they've covered so much ground in each episode. And I'm sure there's that and more story that we have ahead of us. Certainly next week it looks like Clark is starting to be concerned of, like I mentioned before, David being so powerful. What happens if he gets upset? I can understand that being a concern. So, lots of story ahead of us. Cannot wait to see it. So again, thank you for joining me. And if you enjoyed this review, please go ahead and hit that like button. Thoughts, ideas, and comments, you know where to put them, down in the section below. Please let me know what you guys are thinking. I love all the back and forth. Please don't let me down. Kind of keeps everything going. Makes this all feel very interactive. You can always catch me on Twitter and Instagram. I am at Darren Jakes. Please subscribe if you're not. Quick and easy, one button hit right here. You catch all these reviews, plus Westworld. We're finishing up Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. We got Preacher coming up. Don't miss any of those. You can even check out a few right here. Anyway, that's it for me. I'm D, and I'm out of here. Catch you guys next time. Bye-bye.